This is a Tracking the Tropics update with a certified most accurate weather team at First Coast News.
Everyone, I am meteorologist Lee Southwick, and we just got the 8 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. So I'm actually going to look at this with you here. I'm trying to pull up the information, see what the NHC has said as we take a look at these graphics. But what we are starting with here is a look at both Imelda and Umberto. We do have two named storms out there in the Atlantic. So Tropical Storm Imelda formed today. It formed at 2 p.m. And since then, not much has changed. So it does have sustained winds of 40 miles an hour. And you can see that is the case now, too, with this 8 o'clock advisory. It is still expected to become a Category 1 hurricane as well. It will become a Category 1 hurricane by Tuesday. And notice that the cone keeps it at Category 1 strength all the way until Bermuda or around there. So it is possible that it could impact Bermuda. So we'll have to watch that closely. Now I'm going to quickly pull this up and see if there are any changes here with our watches and warnings. Nope, it says no changes with Imelda. So that's good news, honestly, for us here locally, because as of the last advisory at 5 o'clock on the First Coast, things trended better for us. First and foremost, we got rid of that tropical storm watch off of our coast. So here's a look at our watches and warnings now, and you can see that there are still those tropical storm warnings in effect for the Bahamas, of course, because Imelda is over the Bahamas. And as of this new advisory, it is 30 miles southeast of the northwestern Bahamas. It is 335 miles southeast of Cape Canaveral. So for those areas like Cape Canaveral and Point South, you still have the tropical storm warning off the coast in the Atlantic waters. Now, just because the watch here for our Atlantic waters have been removed, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have any impacts from Imelda. So on the First Coast, we will be seeing some impacts. I want to use the word minimal because it's not those tropical impacts with the wind, no bridges will be closing, nothing like that. But still, we will have nuisance weather. It will be impactful in that way. So that is why we have issued a weather impact alert for Monday and Tuesday. We will have strong wind gusts, especially at the beaches. Heavy rain is possible occasionally, off and on, and we will have dangerous seas. So let's break it down. Let's look at all of these individually. Starting with the wind. Everyone on Monday and Tuesday will be feeling a breezy day all across the First Coast, but those wind gusts are going to be stronger at the beaches. The winds will continue into Tuesday, perhaps even pick up into Tuesday. So you can see here on Monday, that's what we're looking at right now. The timestamp is on there we go, on that corner over there. Wind gusts. 20 maybe to 30 miles an hour. And then as we head into Tuesday, I think gusts will be 30 to max maybe 40 miles an hour. So again, gusty conditions for the beaches. Now, we will have some rain bands move on shore occasionally. So you can see Imelda itself staying away from us, but those rain bands do wrap on shore at times. So it is not going to rain all day. It is not going to rain on everyone. But when that rain moves in, it will be heavy. And so for some of you, there could be that risk of flooding. It would be very localized. It just depends where the rain bands come ashore. So this is just one model showing you where those bands do move on shore at what times. We've already had rain today at the beaches, so that's my concern. The ground's already saturated. If we get another rain band that moves in on that same area Monday and Tuesday, you'll likely see a little bit of water collection. So it's not a widespread risk of flooding. It is not really a widespread risk of rain. The higher to the beaches, or the higher chances are out at the beaches. So when we take a look at our rainfall totals, this is just one model run, but it's showing that generally speaking, we're going to get less than an inch of rain total. We will have locally higher amounts. Again, it just depends where that rain band moves ashore. A couple of rain bands move ashore, higher rainfall rates, and then that localized, very isolated risk of flash flooding. Higher chances out of the beaches. You can see those rain chances really do drop, or rain coverage and rainfall totals drop as you head inland. So for some of you inland, you won't even really see, you don't have the guarantee of seeing rain. Some of those rain bands show that they kind of fall apart. I'll actually pull that up again. Notice how these stronger heavier downpours as they move inland, they kind of fall apart some. So again, this is just one model showing you when some of that rain can move on shore, but we're going to keep a close eye on that for you. So breezy for everyone, gustier out at the beaches. We have the rain moving on shore and then falling apart as it moves inland. So the higher rainfall totals are going to be for those of you at the beaches. Now, speaking of the beaches, what about our waters? This is where we have those dangerous beach conditions out in the water. Rip currents are a given. On Monday, our surf height will be a bit higher, 5 to 6 feet. And then on Tuesday, our surf height jumps up to about 10 feet. Either side of 10, I do think occasionally you could get some breakers around 12 feet. That's not for everyone. I don't want to excite the surfers. Remember, these waters are dangerous. If you are not a very, very strong swimmer with a surfboard that you can float on, do not get in the water. I know I cannot speak to the surfers, but just to let you all know, 5 to 6 feet and then 10 feet on Tuesday. It is dangerous, dangerous swimming conditions. Also, we have this onshore flow, and that could pile up our water. So we will have minor flooding possible at times of high tide. Minor. We're talking a high tide of about a foot or two higher than normal, which is honestly something that we have seen recently. So a good number of you used to that. If you do live on the marsh, on the inlet, on the intracoastal, you've seen that water already rising a lot recently. Same story here. Monday and Tuesday, those high tide cycles, you could see that higher than normal high tide. And so high tides on Monday, generally speaking, the 2 to 4 o'clock time frame when it comes to those high tides. So where you are, I know I can't put every spot here, of course, but please just look up your high tide if you need to know. Maybe you have water that creeps up a little bit close to your car where you're parked. You would want to back it up and back it away from water at high tide. Again, just about a foot or two higher than normal, though. Nothing too significant or different than what we have seen recently. So right now we do have some rain moving on shore. Today's rain was associated with a cold front. It's tomorrow's rain that will be from Imelda, and that will again continue into Tuesday. So weather impact alerts in effect from Monday and Tuesday for those impacts from Imelda. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive more into our current situation right now, take a look at radar, and then kind of look ahead through our forecast for the next couple of days. So right now, though, we're going to go to a break, and I will be right back in just a moment. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's get into the rain that we're dealing with right now, especially if you live out at the beaches. It has been off and on all day. So right now, the rain that's moving on shore is near and south of Ponte Vedra. It continues down into St. Augustine. You can see how it's reaching into St. Augustine now. That explosion of green on your screen that you see over places like Oakleaf to Green Cove Springs and over towards McClenny, that is called radar clutter. That is just, sometimes it happens when there's an inversion. It's normal at night when in conditions like this. So that's not rain. The rain that you do see, the darker greens, the yellows, the reds coming on shore there. So near and south of Ponte Vedra Beach area, down to St. Augustine, Villano Beach, you're getting that rain. In fact, let me see if I can zoom in a bit here in the St. Augustine area. So you can see more of that rain pushing in a little bit kind of south of World Golf Village. Looks like it's going to try its best to hold and move over the St. Johns River. So heads up to those of you in Putnam County, you could be seeing that rain next. Also south, more rain from Marineland, Crescent Beach, Palm Coast. There's some lightning strikes there right off the coast too. I'm going to zoom back in on this. Let's get another look here at where that lightning is flashing. So that's a thunderstorm moving on shore. Earlier, if I remember correctly, I think it was Villano Beach, but we showed it in the 6 and 6:30 newscasts. There was a waterspout off the coast, and that happens with thunderstorms out over the water, so not unusual, but something a sight to see for sure. And when we have these thunderstorms offshore, that can happen. And again, all of this has been associated with a front. This is not Imelda, so all of that rain right there along our coastline, that's a front, or really off our coast. But then down in the Bahamas, that is a very disorganized Imelda. So back here locally, it's also breezy. We've had a tightening pressure gradient. As Imelda lifts to the north, front came through, we are seeing winds continue to pick up as we head into our Monday and Tuesday. We already quickly discussed those winds before the break. And so I'm just showing you now that it's still pretty breezy out there. And occasionally we get some stronger gusts. So St. Augustine, you have rain right now. You have a gust that was clocked at 26 miles an hour. NAS Jax is at 21, same for Palm Coast. So Imelda will continue to move to the north, but then curve to the east. We also have Umberto out there as well. Umberto is a major Category 4 hurricane, but I like Umberto for it being such a massive storm. We don't like what it's done to the shipping channels and all of that, but when it comes to landfall, it is going to slide right in between Bermuda and the U.S. East Coast, so not a threat to land, thank goodness. So Umberto is a major hurricane. This 8 o'clock advisory has kept winds at 145 miles an hour, and it's moving to the northwest at 13 miles an hour. Now, again, it's going to miss places like Bermuda, and it's also going to miss the United States. Different story when it comes to Bermuda and it comes to Imelda. Bermuda is under that cone. Imelda is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane by Tuesday and maintain that strength as it moves towards Bermuda. Now, of course, it could go to the south, it could go to the north. The center of Imelda could be anywhere within that cone, but Bermuda is a place that we'll be watching closely after we watch the Bahamas and the southern portions of coastal east coast of Florida. So we're going to take one more break, and then when we come back, we're going to just recap all of it. So if you tuned in late, we're going to restart from the beginning. We're going to go over our impacts here locally, kind of take a look across the southeast coastal areas, take a look at those impacts all across our area and all across the southeast, and we will just take another large look at Imelda and the tropics as a whole, and we'll wrap things up right after the break. All right, welcome back, everyone. So let's take a look at everything happening in the tropics. We, of course, are focusing on Imelda, and we will receive a few impacts from Imelda. Umberto is a major Category 4 hurricane, but it is staying out in the ocean. It is not going to make any sort of landfall to Bermuda or the United States. So here locally, any impacts that we feel are going to be from Imelda. Now, we do have weather impact alerts in effect Monday and Tuesday. Imelda is not making landfall here, but still we'll feel impacts mainly at our beaches. We could start to have some rain bands move on shore. Notice here, that says Monday 4 a.m. So overnight to tomorrow morning, the morning commute, you could already see some showers out there. And then as these rain bands move on shore, you're going to see occasionally heavy rain. There is a low risk of localized flooding where those heavy bands set up and move on shore, especially where the rain falls. If it's fallen on an area that has already seen rain today, you could start to get some of that water collection. But this is not a widespread rain threat or a widespread flood threat. Scattered rain across the first coast, sometimes some heavier rain. It's also going to be breezy for everyone, but we will have stronger gusts, especially out at the beaches, 30 to maybe even 40 miles an hour as we head into our Tuesday. At the beaches, we will have rip currents, rough seas. Surf height could reach 10 feet by Tuesday. So also with the ability to see some higher than normal high tides, maybe some minor coastal flooding. And so that is why Monday and Tuesday are both weather impact alert days, higher risk out at our beaches than for those of you inland where it will just be breezy and you might occasionally have a passing shower. But this is not coming here. Imelda is not making landfall. It is staying away. You can see all the models here agree it's going to move to the north and then cut over to the east. And it will cross the path that Umberto leaves behind. Umberto is also on a very set path here. All of the models kind of agreeing now on the path of these two storms. So as mentioned, not making landfall here, Imelda's storm wind field likely not going to touch land in the southeast. Tropical storm force winds, that's the bubble in yellow, and notice that it also curves. So earlier we had a concern for the Carolinas, parts of Georgia. Now you can see how far out to sea that is going to stay. So really not a concern when it comes to those sustained tropical storm force winds for land. The chance of any sort of tropical storm force winds, extremely low to 0. When you get those greens, it's a 5 to 10% chance of tropical storm force winds. And you can see now that the coasts of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia have all been removed from that. We here on the first coast mainly removed from that. That very, very low chance of tropical storm force winds starts at Palm Coast and then works its way south. So for some areas in South Florida, Central Florida, right along the beaches, it's really the coastal waters, and that is why they are still under the tropical storm warning down there in Central and South Florida for the East Coast. But for our wind speeds, as mentioned, we're not going to get the sustained tropical storm force winds, which is 39, 40 miles an hour. So for us and all up and down the coast, we're also going to look at places like Charleston and Myrtle Beach, since we're watching them closely too. You can see here now your winds topping out in the 20s to maybe 30s for a lot of us on Monday, but then the winds do look like they're stronger on Tuesday. Look at that. Charleston could see a gust of up to 50 miles an hour. So friends, family in the Charleston area, you want to make sure the limbs are cut. You bring in any loose outdoor items like trash cans. Those could go blowing away. So gusty conditions for coastal South Carolina, even into Georgia. Savannah, 37 mile per hour wind gusts. And it comes down a bit for here on the first coast, but still 30 to max 40 mile per hour wind gusts possible for our area beaches. Then as that continues to move away, so this is now Tuesday night, you can see the winds start to relax some as Imelda pushes off to the east. When it comes to rainfall, the most amount of rain, this is from the Weather Prediction Center, the most amount of rain for places like coastal South Carolina, maybe North Carolina, and then here in Florida too. Look at this. Let's zoom back in. Maybe up to about 2 inches of rain for some coastal areas in Duval and St. Johns and Flagler counties. Now that's where those rain bands come on shore. That's where the heavier rain would dump. So locally higher amounts possible. Not everyone going to see all of that. So again, the rain that will move on shore is going to come in. It's going to be sporadic. I'm gonna try to get a better radar picture for you all real quick. Let me pull this up. Here we go. So big picture will show you that some of these rain bands wrap on shore occasionally. You can see the bulk of the rain stays out in the Atlantic, but every once in a while, some of that rain moves on shore here on the first coast, and same for South Carolina, North Carolina, why they were highlighted. I'm gonna run this through one more time again. Once again, you see that moving on shore in the Carolinas, and then occasionally here on the first coast. So when we zoom into the first coast, those bands pass on shore starting tomorrow morning. For some of you, some showers out there, and then some of that heavier rain moving in occasionally. That's why I put occasionally on our weather impact alert graphic, because it's not all the time, it's not an all-day rain, and not everyone even will see rain. But rainfall totals, if you do see rain, especially if you're inland, is more likely going to be a lighter rain. Those of you at the beaches, that's where you get that heavy rain and that risk of flash flooding. We're gonna watch you all very closely. Beaches, that's where the worst impacts are. That's where you'd have the highest wind gusts. That's where you have the highest chance of heavy rain. And that's also where you have rip currents. And again, your surf that's building. So Monday, 5 to 6 feet. And then on Tuesday, it goes up to 10 feet. We could have minor flooding at times of high tide. Now, this is going to be about a foot or two higher than normal, which is similar to what we've seen recently. So if you live in one of those flood prone areas, coastal flooding with the high tides, you know the drill. So maybe just move your car to some higher ground if you are in an area that's been flooding. But this is nothing different than what we have experienced recently. Besides that, we have some showers out there right now moving on shore. We had rain off and on at the beaches all day. That's what concerns me. The heavy rain that fell today saturated the grounds. More rain on the way Monday and Tuesday. That's where I think we could get some freshwater flooding. So we talked about the flooding from high tides, but freshwater flooding, when the bands move on shore, if it's heavy rain on saturated ground, you can start to see some of that water collect, some of that rain water collect. Right now, more of that rain pushing into St. Augustine, even Ponte Vedra Beach, kind of moving through St. Johns County, moving into Crescent Beach. Even looks like Hastings, you're about to get some of that rain too. We'll see if it continues to hold and push further into places like Putnam County. And then Palm Coast, Marineland, you have that heavy rain. Man, Flagler County, I've seen a lot of rain move on shore for you all. It even continues down into Ormond and Daytona Beach. Then with that rain, that is a front. It's tomorrow and Tuesday that we would see the rain bands from Imelda. And you can see Imelda is a disorganized mess down there in the Bahamas. Imelda is a tropical storm now, sustained winds of 40 miles an hour, has that close center of circulation, just it's kind of elongated there in the Bahamas. Very different than Umberto, which you can see over in the Atlantic, a major Category 4 hurricane. But Imelda will continue to move to the north and move across the Bahamas. It is expected to strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane, and that will happen likely maybe around Tuesday morning. That's the forecast now. It is expected to maintain its strength as it moves towards Bermuda. So we'll have to watch Bermuda closely. Category 1 hurricane. I have friends who here at the station who have worked in Bermuda before. They say they like Cat 1 hurricanes over there because that's how they get their water. Obviously, they're on an island in the middle of the Atlantic, so it's all their fresh water is rainwater. So for them, I'm going to wish lots of fresh water that doesn't overdo it and no wind for them too. But we're going to watch them very closely, of course, so we don't want any sort of damaging impacts to Bermuda. And thank goodness that Umberto is missing them. Umberto will be moving to the west of them, to our east, but to the west of Bermuda, and continue out then into sea. So with this trend from Imelda, the trend to the east, we have more certainty in that. We're really becoming confident that that thing's just going to turn to the east and get out of here. And so therefore, as of the 5 o'clock advisory, they dropped the tropical storm watch that was off our coast here on the first coast. So they still have the tropical storm warning in effect for Central and South Florida, but for us, we are going to only watch out for these impacts at our beaches mainly, some heavy rain, coastal wind gusts, dangerous seas. We'll be watching it very closely for you, and we will keep you updated. I'll see you tonight at 11 p.m.